Reading Recovery for the 21st Century Learner. Reading Recovery was designed in the 1970s by Marie M. Clay. It's a short-term early literacy intervention for grade 1 students, the lowest achieving grade 1 students. The program consists of 30-minute individualized lessons, which are designed for each learner. The lessons last for a maximum of 20 weeks, but the goal of Reading Recovery is to exit the students by week 16. The goal of each lesson for individual students is for the child to behave as independently as possible in both reading and writing. So the teacher has to first provide more support and then slowly take that support away as the child takes on more independence. Acceleration. Reading Recovery students are the lowest achieving students in grade 1. So Mary M. Clay argued that these students need to accelerate to catch up with the cohort of their peers to meet grade level expectations. So what that means is that in terms of reading recovery, if students are entering at a text level of 1 or even lower than that dictated text, that in order to make level 16, they have to be moving a level a week to make accelerated progress. So if they discontinue at level 16 within 16 to 20 weeks, then they've met acceleration as long as their stay nines on their other tasks are above a 5. Literacy processing is a reader's decision about what a text says. This theory is based on the following principles. Reading is a complex problem-solving process. Children construct their understanding. Children come to literacy with varying knowledge. Reading and writing are reciprocal processes and interrelated. Learning to read and write involves a continuous process of change over time. Children take different paths to literacy learning. Reading recovery is based on teaching to the individual learner and building on their prior knowledge. While keeping the task easy, the teacher's role is to introduce tasks that the students can do with little help and slowly prompt for increased independence on these tasks. As a child can do more on their own, the level of support changes to allow the child to make connections between what they know and what they are learning. Teachers need to believe that children can learn difficult and complex ideas, but they must be content that students can only do this one step at a time. Reading recovery teachers have to be experts on the content they're teaching as well as their students. In their first year of training, reading recovery teachers go every 2 weeks for training with their teacher leader. And after that, it's once a month so that they can continue to grow and work with Mary M. Clay's lessons for individual learners. Many research studies have shown positive effects for students who are in reading recovery. What Works Clearinghouse in 2013 found that reading recovery had positive effects on general reading achievement and potentially positive effects on the alphabet reading fluency and comprehension for beginning readers. A lot of these studies feel that the students are more likely to achieve if they discontinue reading recovery at a higher text level. So many studies conclude that short-term effects of reading recovery are significant for students. There are also research studies that report fewer positive findings for reading recovery. While the program has shown that it works for many students, it has not demonstrated that it works for students who are most at risk of failing to learn to read. Many of these research studies suggest that further research should be done to focus on why reading recovery is not supporting the students who are most at risk. In Halifax, the Halifax Regional Centre of Education, in 2016-2017, 31 schools in the Halifax Regional Centre received reading recovery support. Since then, that number has grown. Each year they add more schools to receive reading recovery. So in that year, 2016-2017, 260 grade 1 students, English students, received reading recovery support. These are the results for 2016-2017 for the Halifax Regional Centre of Education. Basically that year, 31% of the students achieved accelerated progress, 12% achieved substantial progress, and 57% achieved limited progress. So what does this mean for Halifax Regional School Board? 57% of the students did not finish the program successfully. So that means that they finished at limited progress, which is usually below level 9. So that means if they came into the program at level 1 or 2, they've only moved 8 levels in 20 weeks. 43% of the students met or came close to meeting grade level expectations. So these are usually students who have finished above level 10. So the question here is 57% did not finish the program successfully. So obviously we're not providing the skills, or something's happening in the instruction that we need to address. Reading recovery was designed in 1970 by Marie M. Clay. So that means the program was designed to almost 50 years ago. We are still using the same text literacy lessons for individual learners to teach our reading recovery students. It's had one edition update, but only a few words were changed. So the concern is today our 21st century learners need different skills than they would have 50 years ago. So they're having difficulty applying these reading recovery procedures to their real lives, to their classrooms, and to their prior knowledge. So the literacy lessons are most likely not as authentic as they could be. Over the years, the skills required for our students' success have changed due to the evolving needs of society. The 21st century requires education to provide a new set of skills for our students. The successful integration of technology into curriculum can enhance student learning and increase their understanding of the skills needed for the 21st century. Online learning games can't replace the importance of book and text reading, but can support some early literacy skills such as letter identification, high-frequency words, word reading and recall, fluency, and comprehension. An online game such as Squiggle Park could be used to support reading recovery students. The retention and recall of high-frequency words is often challenging for reading recovery students, so the repetition and practice of these is very important. If students were given the opportunity to use an online early literacy game to focus on these skills, it would increase their exposure to them and their practice. It would also activate their prior knowledge, as most 21st century children have had experience and are familiar with using technology. Currently, technology is not used in reading recovery. However, the use of an online early literacy game would be important for these students and could be used after the lesson to reinforce the skills that they were practicing during the lesson. It's important that teachers incorporate these technologies into learning in meaningful ways to help support students and make their learning more authentic. Introducing Squiggle Park to reading recovery students after their reading recovery lesson would help them to practice skills that they had learned during the lesson. Squiggle Park is an online literacy game based on different worlds in which the player must travel to practice literacy skills. Squiggle Park is built on the concept that practice is the best route. Each world has a defined curriculum that players practice and master as they play through the stages within the world. At the end of the world, players will complete the final stage where they must combine all the skills they've practiced throughout the world. As the worlds build upon each other, players are continually reinforcing their mastery of earlier skills, as those skills will reappear in later stages. The retention and recall of high-frequency words will support students' reading growth and help them achieve grade level expectations. Providing students with more practice and more exposure to these words is important, and as the quote here suggests, that phonemic awareness along with sight word games is important and engaging for students. So moving forward, as we've seen so far in this presentation, reading recovery does offer literacy skills and growth to students. And teachers, reading recovery teachers, are highly trained, and they can work with what the child knows and extend their literacy knowledge. Students do become more independent readers and writers after the early literacy intervention. However, research is inconclusive about the sustainability of literacy results after completing reading recovery. There are many studies that show that after 3 to 5 years, reading recovery students do not end up keeping up with their cohort in their class. Also, reading recovery was designed in the 1970s, and society's changed a lot since then. And reading recovery could be updated to better reflect today's society. It's also apparent from the HRCE results that reading recovery is not meeting the needs of our 21st century learners, with 57% of students finishing at limited progress. I believe that there's more that can be done to support those students. It's important that we build on what students already know. 21st century students are very different than students would have been in the 1970s. However, all students have prior literacy knowledge and experiences. These experiences may vary dramatically between children, as we see in schools now as children enter grade primary. They all have had different exposure to literacy prior to coming to school. However, we know that most students have some experience with technology. For students to be successful in the 21st century, we need to make sure that their learning reflects their needs and their prior experiences in order to be authentic. So most classrooms have technology available for students, which is used regularly. They have access to Chromebooks and iPads. Literacy skills could be more successfully acquired and transferred to the classroom. If we were using these techniques in reading recovery, it would be easier for the students to bridge the gap between what they're doing in the classroom and what a reading recovery lesson should look like. The 21st century learner requires these changes so they can be successful in our multi-literacy society. With the addition of an online literacy game for reading recovery students, they would increase practice of literacy skills and activate prior knowledge, as most 21st century children have experienced and are familiar with technology. This would result in increased literacy skills and more successful reading recovery results. Hopefully in the future, more can be done to bring reading recovery into the 21st century to better support our students.